Hello, I'm HomoArrosor. Look closely at this hypermodern digital financial nexus. I need you to understand right out of the gate that this isn't some distant science fiction concept. This is our undeniable, concrete reality right now, today in July 2026. Today, I'm going to walk you through the absolute most profound structural shift in the history of modern finance. We are rapidly transitioning out of the third industrial era, which was entirely defined by the securitization of physical assets, into closed national markets, and we are definitively, irreversibly entering the fourth industrial era. And this new era, it is driven entirely by global tokenization. We're going to dive deep into the exact legislative actions, the raw data, and the massive infrastructure deployments that are happening globally as we speak. Because what's actually happening is that the DTCC and the x402 protocol are systematically building a $1 world. This explainer is going to break down exactly, step by step, how this new global operating system is being installed. So let's jump right into it.
Take a second and internalize this quote. The financial map of the world is being rewritten right now, in July 2026. I am not talking about a speculative future trend or some hypothetical scenario cooked up in a think tank. I'm talking about concrete, massive actions taken by sovereign nations and the world's most powerful supranational financial institutions over the past few weeks and months. The old era of public speculation, the time when blockchain was viewed merely as this outside casino for retail investors to gamble in, that era is completely dead. The new reality, the undeniable fact, is that national governments and the world's largest clearinghouses are actively installing blockchain technology as the core, foundational operating system of global finance. Let's look at exactly how this is building across the globe, and we're going to start by looking at the massive legislative shifts happening over in Asia. Section 1. Asia institutionalizes token assets. What we are witnessing right now is an all-out Asian tokenization competition. These nations are restructuring their state infrastructure from the ground up because they are in a fierce competition for survival. They clearly understand that as the United States and Europe tokenize their capital markets, any nation that chooses to remain on closed legacy ledgers will be completely isolated from the global liquidity pool. The sheer density of undeniable legislative facts we are seeing here is absolutely staggering. Let's break this down. In Japan, just days ago, on July 15, 2026, massive amendments to key financial and payment acts, specifically the FIEA and PSA, officially passed. Japan essentially moved non-security crypto assets straight into a formal institutional financial framework. They dropped a punishing 55% comprehensive tax rate all the way down to a 20% separate taxation system. That is a clear signal of financial institutionalization. In Korea, the government is officially incorporating virtual assets into its national asset management system, and their massive security token offering, or STO, framework is locked in to go fully live in early 2027. Moving over to Taiwan, they passed their virtual asset service provider law on June 30, 2026, which mandates a strict 100% reserve for stablecoins. Hong Kong, they've already been issuing stablecoin licenses since April 2026 and are aggressively settling real-world assets through Project Ensemble. And finally, Singapore is pushing hardcore institutional infrastructure, focusing heavily on wholesale central bank digital currencies for financial institutions and tokenized MAS bills, which are essentially digital government bonds. What we are looking at is a synchronized structural overhaul across the entire region. The state has shifted its perception entirely from public speculation to recognizing these as core national assets. Now, you really need to understand the core truth of this institutional shift. Legalizing an asset does not increase its anonymity. In fact, it absolutely destroys it. The true structure rolling out right now consists of 4 rigid, non-negotiable steps. First, legal asset recognition. Second, heavily regulated custody and exchanges. Third, and this is absolutely crucial, registered wallets tied strictly to verified human identity. And fourth, tokenized money settlement. Listen, the state is not eliminating blockchain, it is absorbing it completely. To even enter this new legalized network, you must cryptographically prove exactly who you are, ensure you are not on a global sanctions list, and meticulously verify your source of funds. The era of the anonymous, untraceable wallet interacting with institutional assets, it's over. Extreme protocol-level verification is the new standard.
Section 2. Securitization to global tokenization.
I want to elevate our perspective for a minute because we need to understand the absolute macro magnitude of this transition. We are moving directly from the third industrial era straight into the fourth. Let's definitively contrast these two eras so we know exactly what's changing. In the third era, which was totally defined by securitization, the financial system took physical reality, things like corporate production, real estate, or future cash flows, converted them into standard financial rights, and placed them into national financial markets. Now, that was a massive leap forward, sure, but those assets remained totally trapped within national borders. They were siloed in specific central securities depositories and local clearinghouses. But the fourth era, that is tokenization. This is the act of taking literally all value, all property rights, and all production capabilities and placing them onto a singular, global, programmable network. We're not just digitizing stock certificates anymore. We're turning ownership, access rates, human identity, AI models, and raw computing power into programmable digital objects that move instantly, frictionlessly across the entire globe.
And this brings us to a harsh but absolutely necessary realization. We have moved entirely from a narrative of public speculation to a reality of hard national infrastructure. Blockchain technology is no longer outside the traditional financial system. It hasn't been for a while. It has been decisively, structurally installed as the core operating system of both national and global finance. It automates clearing, it automates collateral movement, and it literally executes monetary policy in real time. The governments and the mega banks have taken the very technology that was initially designed to bypass them, and they have leveraged it to drastically, unbelievably increase their own efficiency and control.
Section 3. DTCC and collateral border collapse.
So let's zoom directly into the engine room of global finance, Wall Street and the Depository Trust and Clearing Corporation, the DTCC. For context, the DTCC is the ultimate systemically important financial market utility, operating under U.S. law, processing an unimaginable $47 trillion processing network. And their current actions are completely reshaping the physical borders of the world. This isn't a theory, this is a scheduled reality. On July 15, 2026, the DTCC executed actual live production trades using tokenized U.S. Treasuries and equities on the Canton and Besu networks, which, by the way, are highly specialized permissioned enterprise blockchains. This wasn't a sandbox test. It was the live implementation of collateral, repo, and margin processing using tokenized assets. But the true absolute paradigm shift occurs in October 2026. That is when the DTC's tokenization service officially enters the main game. This is the exact definitive moment when this massive $47 trillion processing network shifts from legacy siloed databases to a 24/7 instantly interoperable tokenized reality.
To truly understand why October is such a critical tipping point, we have to look at the exact mechanics of how this interoperability works. Step 1. The DTCC tokenizes U.S. assets internally, maintaining the rigid legal ownership while simultaneously issuing programmable tokens. Step 2, Europe's equivalent powerhouse, Euroclear, operates its own digital financial market infrastructure and specialized securities wallets. Now, Step 3 is the absolute game changer, cross-network collateral usage. Think about what this means. The world's largest financial institutions are actively demanding the ability to take a U.S. Treasury that was tokenized by the DTCC and instantly, seamlessly, use it as collateral in a European market via Euroclear or in an Asian liquidity pool. And they want to do this without arbitrary delays, without being blocked by time zone restrictions, and without getting stuck in localized custody traps. This exact interoperability definitively, permanently breaks down the borders of global liquidity.
I define this phenomenon specifically as the collateral border collapse. Really grasp this definition. It is the exact point in time where maintaining separate, isolated national ledgers becomes completely economically unviable, creating a single, relentless 24/7 global liquidity pool. Ask yourself, why on earth would a massive global bank keep trillions in assets locked in a national depository that literally closes its doors at 5 p.m. on a Friday, when they have the option to move tokenized U.S. Treasuries 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, instantly across the globe to capture yield or post margin? Spoiler alert, they absolutely won't. The sheer economic pressure of this efficiency forces the absolute collapse of technical financial borders, entirely eliminating time zones and jurisdictional silos for global capital.
Section 4. Wallets and code dictate borders. Now, it's vital to understand that the end of physical financial borders does not mean the end of rules. Not at all. It just means the physical geography of a nation-state is no longer the actual barrier to entry for capital. Instead, the new laws of geographic and financial boundaries are dictated entirely by registered wallets and code. Regulations do not magically disappear in the tokenization era. They are mathematically embedded directly into the code itself. Look at the new borders. 1. Registered wallets. You literally cannot hold institutional assets in an anonymous address. The code won't allow it. 2. Verified investor eligibility. 3. Real-time sanction and anti-money laundering checks that run autonomously at the protocol level on every single transaction. 4. Asset holding qualifications based strictly on your verified jurisdiction. 5. Smart contract transfer limits. A tokenized U.S. Treasury moving at the speed of light across the globe can only be received by a wallet that is mathematically proven to be compliant. The border is no longer the physical edge of a country. The border is now the cryptographic perimeter of your registered digital wallet.
And what happens to traditional sovereign national currencies when this highly efficient global system takes over? Well, we're already seeing it. In weak currency zones like Nigeria right now, 95% of surveyed workers explicitly demand to be paid in US dollar stablecoins rather than their rapidly depreciating local currency. 95%. This represents the harsh reality of digital dollarization. Citizens are bypassing their own central banks entirely. Think about the magnitude of that. They live physically in their home country, but their economic loyalty, their hard-earned savings, and their daily transactions have entirely migrated to the digital dollar network. This is the undeniable, real-time weakening of monetary sovereignty for any nation that doesn't control a reserve currency.
Which leads us directly to the rise of supranational powers. As local currencies continue to collapse or simply become irrelevant for meaningful global transactions, sovereign nations are being forced to compete with and ultimately submit to a massive supranational corporate state network. The entities that actually control the stablecoins, the tokenized treasuries, the automated clearinghouses, and the verified identity networks, they wield significantly more practical day-to-day power over a nation's citizens than the local government itself. This is a profound structural shift of authority away from territorial states and directly into the hands of digital infrastructure providers.
Section 5, 402, and the Genesis mission. We have now arrived at the absolute intersection of autonomous AI agents, infinite global capital, and massive computing power. The financial layer we just discussed is currently merging directly with the artificial intelligence production layer. To understand how this works, we must define the x402 protocol. It is effectively an HTTP payment framework designed specifically for machines. It allows AI agents to negotiate, interact, and pay for resources instantly, all without a single human intervention. But here is the critical, foundational fact. The x402 protocol defaults almost entirely to US dollar stablecoins, specifically USDC. When an autonomous AI agent buys computing power, scientific data, or logic processing, it pays in digital dollars. The AI agent economy, which will very soon process billions of microtransactions every single second, runs natively on and rigidly enforces global digitalization. Machines do not care about local fiat. They use the digital dollar.
And what exact resources are these AI agents accessing with those digital dollars? That is where the U.S. government's Genesis mission comes in. The Genesis mission is an explicit strategic directive to integrate the nation's most incredibly powerful supercomputers, vast silos of scientific data, and cutting-edge AI models into one highly secure, unified platform. Step 2 of this mission involves approving private mega partners. We're talking about giants like OpenAI and NVIDIA to actually build out this ecosystem. And step 3 is the kicker, controlling total absolute access to this unbelievable computing power via verified digital identity. So think about the pairing here. The DTC controls global access to capital. The Genesis mission controls global access to the world's highest tier AI compute and robotics.
When you combine these two massive pillars, capital access combined with AI compute access creates what is definitively a new economic citizenship. Honestly, your physical passport, the specific plot of land you were born on, it matters less and less every day. What truly defines your economic status, your actual ability to produce wealth, and your class in the 21st century is simply this. Does your verified digital identity grant your wallet access to the DTCC's global capital networks and the Genesis mission's AI compute resources? If you have that verified access, you are a first-class citizen of the new global economy. If you do not have it, you are entirely marginalized, locked out of the system that generates all meaningful wealth. Section 6, the $1 world. When we say the $1 world, we are not talking about a single, literal digital coin that every single person uses for everything. We are talking about a unified, overarching global operating system. In this $1 world, traditional nations are fundamentally transformed into subsystem nations. Nation-states certainly do not disappear, but their roles are severely, permanently downgraded. They become responsible merely for physical administration, local tax collection, physical policing of the streets, regional infrastructure like filling potholes and paving roads, and basic physical welfare for citizens.
They handle the physical maintenance of human bodies, while the supranational corporate state network handles all true capital allocation, all advanced AI intelligence, and all meaningful high-level economic production. Which brings us to the definitive, unavoidable conclusion: one world, one currency, the dollar. Yes, local tokens will continue to exist. Yes, central bank digital currencies from other nations will exist and operate in their own specific zones. But the overarching global operating system, the base foundational layer of the massive AI economy, the core collateral moving through the DTCC, and the default hard-coded settlement unit of the x402 protocol is definitively priced, collateralized, and settled in US dollars. The digital dollar is the absolute, unquestionable standard of the tokenized era.
I really want to leave you with this final summarizing thought because it perfectly captures everything we've covered today. In the late 21st century, your economic destiny is not defined by your nationality, but by the wallets, platforms, and financial networks you are registered to. The shift in immense power from traditional territorial states to these sprawling supranational digital networks is complete. The fourth industrial era of tokenization hasn't just updated the technology. It has entirely rewritten the fundamental rules of power, wealth, and identity on a planetary scale. So, looking at everything we've just unpacked, I have to ask you directly, are you prepared for an economy where your access to capital and intelligence is dictated entirely by your registration to a single, global, dollar-denominated network? Because that transition isn't coming in a decade. It is executing right now, line by line, law by law. You need to understand the absolute rules of the system you are now living in. Thank you for joining me for this explainer. I'm HomoArrosor. See you next time.